morning, Mr. Jonchuck.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'm guessing that all the case law from the state is to deal with the issue of Dr. Wagner testifying and Sir both, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to deal with that right this second.
Correct.
Okay, so we're just dealing now with the defense motion to have a hearing as to the exclusion of Dr. Lazaro testifying about the PCLR. I'm guessing the argument is because the prejudicial value outweighs the probative value because they are arguing that Dr. Lazaro was improperly trained to administer it and that the results would be not reliable and therefore not probative and prejudicial. Is that it?
Regarding the PCLR part, regarding the psychopathy part, I think there are some findings that the court made.
I think we're doing the PCLR first,
Well,
right?
it's all together. The way that you get the character assessment of psychopathy is based on your score from the PCLR.
Okay. Right. But
So there was.
But if I say she can testify about the PCLR, that obviously would come in. If I say she can't, it would. Through her.
I think there's still two separate issues. I would agree that they are very much intertwined, but.
Okay, well, let's do the PCLR just in and of itself first. The training aspect of it that you're going after, right? So, isn't that what you're asking me to do?
My understanding, I would ask that the witness one be removed from the courtroom while we have make argument.
All right, that's fine. I didn't even know Dr. Lazaro was here. That's fine. Dr. Lazaro, would you mind stepping back in one of those rooms? Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
My understanding of what we are doing in the next 2 hours or less is for me to determine whether Dr. Lazaro, in her training, that her training was so deficient in giving it that the results aren't reliable in her case, so therefore it would be more prejudicial than probative for her, Dr. Lazaro, to give testimony about the PCLR checklist. Isn't that what I'm doing?
Yes.
Okay.
In addition to that, though.
Okay, but let me do that first. Right? I do that first.
Well, the issue is though they're intertwined. So it would make sense to say her sole opinion, not sole opinion, but is the basis of her opinion is that he is a psychopath. What she puts in her report, DSM diagnoses, psychopathy, malingering, substance abuse stuff.
Okay.
So our point is, or our issue is if the court says that she can't testify about psychopathy, then
she can't. Go ahead.
Then she shouldn't be able to, then what would she testify to? So I guess the court needs to see what generally her opinions are going to be, because the issue is that she says that she determines that he's a psychopath. She uses some general format of the PCLR to make that determination. The court made findings regarding Dr. Burston specifically that he testified that it was a more extreme form of antisocial personality disorder. It better explained his diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. Dr. Burston also testified that antisocial personality disorder then is required to have a psychopathy specifier. We don't have an antisocial personality disorder diagnosis from Dr. Lazaro.
Okay. So her diagnosis is malingering, substance abuse disorder, and John's a psychopath, but a psychopath is not a DSMB, that's the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Right.
In the statistical diagnostic manual, psychopathy in and of itself is not mental illness.
Correct.
Okay, so the issue's gonna be is, I get it now. Okay, so. She diagnosed him with a substance abuse disorder, correct?
She diagnoses him, yes, psychopathy, malingering, sedative hypnotic use disorder, and then stimulant, cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, and hallucinogen use disorder, and in sustained full remission.
But is not
So that wouldn't be at the time.
But isn't that a diagnosis?
She doesn't, for diagnoses at the time of offense, she says the sedative hypnotic use disorder and the other disorder are her diagnoses when she meets with him, not at the time of offense. So the only relevant ones would be,
Okay.
well, and I guess the malingering is, well, she kind of, it's not really clear since malingering isn't a diagnosis, but she indicates that she believes he's feigning symptoms, I guess, back then and lying about them now. So there may be some basis, I guess, maybe for malingering, I don't know, but.
Okay, but malingering is not a mental health diagnosis.
Correct.
All right, did you want to say something, Mr. Bowman?
We can put her on and start the hearing. If she's making an argument now.
I just asked, what am I doing?
Right. No, I understand.
Well, that's also part of the problem, Judge. We don't have a motion or anything as to what this is all about, so we're trying to, we're kind of handcuffed by them deciding they can bring things up in the middle of the trial without giving us sufficient notice.
Well, she brought this up before in the hearing I had when she was asking me to exclude her as a witness. I said I wasn't going to do that, but I also indicated that I would do a proffer as to some of the issues. So I said I would do that.
And I did also file even after that, Judge, remember I filed the other motion. The court heard it regards to Dr. Burston, but my motion was specifically on all evidence of psychopathy, psychopath, the PCLR. So my motion was regarding the evidence.
Okay, but I want it presented narrowly as to just what you're asking me to do. Ms. Manuel, I'm not going to proffer her entire testimony.
I'm not putting on any test. I plan to cross-examine her on what I think is relevant, but I don't think the state's putting on her entire testimony right now.
Well, why am I doing this?
Because I filed the motion indicating that psychopathy and the PCLR are not relevant. I subsequently requested a Fry hearing regarding the use of the PCLR. So, as when we object to evidence, the proponent of the evidence has the burden by a preponderance of evidence to show that it is relevant and admissible. So I've challenged it, and so presumably we're doing this for the state to put on evidence to show that it is relevant and admissible.
Well, the motion that they filed originally about the PCLR, which Dr. Burston testified, was written and argued in such a way that they were saying that it's unfairly prejudicial, that the prejudicial value outweighs the probative value. We've already addressed that, and we've already ruled on that. So I think that motion is over with at this point.
I would agree.
So I don't think that there's actually a written motion on the floor at this time before the court to discuss. I'm happy to proffer her credentials, though, about the PCLR.
Well, I don't think, but I think there's more probably to this proffer than just the PCLR. Okay, well, let's put her on the stand.
Okay.
Stand right here, please. Just raise your right hand, try to take the oath.
You do solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Now, you have a seat in your chair, speaking loud and clear voice for the court.
Good morning, Dr. Mazzaro.
Good morning.
Make sure you know what's close to the microphone.
Mr. Bowman?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Emily E. Lazaro, MD.
Spell your last name, please, for the record.
L-A-Z as in zebra, A-R-O-U.
What is your occupation?
I am a general and forensic psychiatrist.
And can you describe your education and residency to the court?
I went to my undergrad at Baylor University, and then I went on to do my master's at Texas A&M University, and I went on to medical school at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, and then went on to do my residency at the University of South Florida, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine here in Tampa. And then in my final year of residency, I was the chief resident, and then I did a year fellowship. I was the first fellow to graduate for the University of South Florida Department of Psychiatry's Forensic Psychiatry program.
Let me give you a minute to set up your stuff.
I am multitasking.
And what licenses do you hold?
I hold medical licenses in Texas, Mississippi, Florida, and Illinois.
And what are your professional memberships?
I'm a member of APPLE, the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, and the Florida Medical Association.
Is Apple a voluntary organization?
Yes.
Okay. And can you describe what your fellowship at USF was like? What were the things that you were focused on during your fellowship as far as your day-to-day work?
My day-to-day work, I was working hand-in-hand with my mentor and the program director, Dr. Wade Myers. I did clinical work with him. I was the consult liaison physician for forensics at Tampa General Hospital, so anytime they had an issue of competency or something for medical treatment, they called me for that. I also worked as a psychiatrist at the Falkenberg Road Jail for the entire year, and I worked hand-in-hand and one-on-one with Dr. Myers there in a fellowship for an entire year. As a full-time fellowship, probably working about 80 hours a week.
Did you have the occasion to be trained on the use of the PCLR during your fellowship with Dr. Myers?
Yes, Dr. Myers, one of his research interests is psychopathy, and so that was one thing that he really focused on. We worked on cases together. We actually wrote a scholarly article that's in a journal regarding the PCLR as a factor in recidivism. And in many of the cases that we worked on together, we did the PCLR.
Okay. And he's the one that trained you on the PCLR and how to properly use it?
Yes.
And did you administer the PCLR during your one-year fellowship with Dr. Myers at USF?
Yes.
How many times did you administer the PCLR during that year?
Conservatively, I'm going to say 50, about once a week. But in the article that we wrote together, there was 22 different offenders that we evaluated. So I would say there was probably more than that, but conservatively, I'd say 50.
What are the requirements by Dr. Hare to administer a PCLR?
There's not really too many requirements. You have to have an upper level of education. MD is one of the advanced degrees that he requires.
Do you meet that criteria?
Yes. The lowest end of that criteria is just a master's degree, so which I also have. But there's also have completed graduate courses in psychopathology, statistics, and psychometric theory. Obviously, in medical school we did psychopathology, but in residency we did more of the psychometric theory. Statistics we also did in medical school and residency. The next requirement, be familiar with the clinical research, clinical and research literature on psychopathy, which was part of my training. And again, I wrote an article related to that. Number 4, have appropriate professional credentials or be legally authorized to conduct psychological assessments, which I can.
That's because you're a licensed medical doctor in the state of Florida?
Yes.
And a psychiatrist, correct?
Yes. When you go to purchase those items, they actually have a criteria for you to be able to even purchase the item. So I met the criteria to purchase the item, this checklist.
Okay. What are the other requirements?
There's one other requirement in terms of just the basic requirements. Ensure that they have adequate training and experience in the use of the PCLR, which again, working in my fellowship over the course of the year, working with Dr. Myers hand in hand, I believe I meet that criteria. He also talks, in addition to the training, specifically that he says, regardless of how they're trained, clinicians or researchers should complete 5 to 10 practice assessments in order to achieve an acceptable level of inter-rater reliability before using the PCLR for clinical or forensic purposes. and I did at least 50 with Dr. Myers.
And after you finish your fellowship with Dr. Myers, you continued to practice psychiatry professionally up to the present day, correct?
Yes, I've been in private practice since 2008.
And how many times have you administered the PCLR conservatively in your career?
I'd say conservatively, I would say another 50. Probably more than that, but conservatively, I'd say 50.
So as many as 100, including your fellowship?
Yes.
Does Dr. Hare, who developed the PCLR, say in his manual that you have to be trained by him or one of his associates?
No.
What does Dr. Hare say about that?
He says specifically exactly that. He says, let's see. Training can be provided within institutions by individuals who themselves are experienced in the administration, scoring, and interpretation of the PCLR. Some institutions have set their own standards for in-house PCLR training, and most of the clinicians who participate in this training should have little difficulty in conducting reliable PCLR assessments.
And you said previously that there are at least 5 to 10 that you have to do to make sure that there's inter-rater reliability.
Yes, Dr. Hare says, regardless of how they are trained, clinicians or researchers should complete 5 to 10 practice assessments in order to achieve an acceptable level of inter-rater reliability.
And that's a requirement before you can administer it on your own, correct?
Yes.
And you did that in your fellowship?
Oh, yes.
In this particular case, did you administer a PCLR?
Yes.
Did you happen, without getting into all of the results, did you determine that the defendant meets the criteria for psychopathy?
Yes.
Subsequent to conducting your PCLR, have you attended any other continuing medical education
Yes.
courses or training on the Hare?
Yes, I have. By the training that's provided by Dr. Hare himself, I did attend that
When was
this
that?
year. I don't remember the exact date. I don't know if it was January or February. I believe it was the beginning of February.
Okay. And subsequent to doing that training, did you change your opinion about whether or not the defendant has psychopathy in this case?
No.
Have you previously testified in court as an expert witness?
Yes.
Okay. Have you previously testified in court to your administration of a PCLR?
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? That's all I have, Your Honor. I could also get into her specific findings, but I'm assuming we're not doing that at this time.
Well, I think we have to address the other issue as to the checklist dilemma with the recognized mental illness.
Okay.
Okay?
Dr. Lazaro, did you find in this case that the defendant has mental illness?
No.
What is your opinion as to the defendant's claim of mental illness in this case?
I believe that he's malingering those symptoms.
And how does that relate, if it does at all, to psychopathy?
It doesn't relate to psychopathy.
Okay. Can you have psychopathy and still have mental illness?
Yes.
Can the reverse be true as well?
Yes.
Okay. Why is psychopathy important to your opinion in this case, if they are unrelated in terms of your opinion?
Because, in my opinion, it's the basis for which he did the crime altogether.
So I can go much deeper. Let's but it's gonna take some time.
Okay.
Okay. Can we put for just a moment, yeah?
rise. We'll be in recess till 10 minutes after 10 o'clock.